The journey to get to a national bank was a difficult one, but our country worked hard and achieved its much-needed goal. The need for a banking system was obvious, but not agreed on. With the first national bank, our banking system has grown beyond what people ever thought was possible. The first national bank is a big frontier moment in history because it has a huge effect on our government and economy. With this, the government is making money from loans and taxes and has a better place for deposits. Although we needed a national bank, many people were against the idea of one. Before the first national bank was even made, our banking system wasn't very cohesive. For example, if I lived in New York and I wanted to buy something in Philadelphia, I would hope that Philadelphia would accept my New York money. As Alexander Hamilton being the Secretary of Treasury, he wanted to revive the idea. But his nemesis Thomas Jefferson believed that the states should each have their own banks, and that a national bank would unfairly favor wealthy businessmen in urban areas over farmers in the country. That then led to a debate. Hamilton's case at the debate was that it would be convenient to have a national bank as a depository of tax revenues, eliminate the middleman of a private bank, and he wanted the government to make selective loans. To prove why he believes that they need a national bank, Hamilton in the letter writes, "It is impossible the contest can be much longer supported on the present footing. We must have a government with more power. We must have a tax in kind. We must have a foreign loan. We must have a bank on true principles of a bank. We must have an administration district from Congress and the hands of single men under their orders." Hamilton means that the government should be more stable, that they should have a place where they can make taxes and make loans, and to have a bank that they can rely on, run by Congress. Hamilton then spends a lot of time explaining how the great European powers all have access to a national bank for operations that improve their government. Hamilton points out many advantages that banks have for governments and also for speeding up trade. It makes it easy for common civilians. Hamilton then writes a letter to Robert Morris saying, "To me it appears evident that an executive ministry composed of men with the qualifications I have described would speedily restore the credit of the government." He is trying to explain that a national bank will successfully gain back America's credit. In another letter, Hamilton writes to George Clinton saying, "I am much mistaken if the debts due from the United States to the citizens of the state of New York do not considerably exceed its proportion of necessary funds. Of course, it has immediate interest that there should be a continental provision for them, but there are certain superior motives that ought to operate in every state. The obligation of national faith, honor, and reputation." This means that Hamilton feels that since New York is a wealthy state, that he thinks that their citizens should pay taxes. Again, Hamilton writes a letter to the Continental Congress saying, "There are some of us ignorant enough to imagine that the war may be carried on without credit, defraying the expenses of the year with what may be raised within the year. But this is for want of a knowledge of our real resources and expenses. It may be demonstrated that the whole amount of the revenue, which these states are capable of affording, will be deficit annual $5 or $6 millions for the support of civil government and of the war." Through this, Hamilton is saying that we need credit to survive through the war, because he knows that there will be many expenses during the war. So to afford it, he wants the states to start paying taxes. Hamilton spends a lot of time getting ready because he anticipates that there's going to be a lot of anti-bank forces. So he spends most of the time in the bank's report system trying to address these. People thought that a bank that could print paper money was dangerous, and it could not only create inflation, but also create good and bad intervals in the economy. He knew that a national bank would be of high importance to the government. It would be a ready source for loans and would be a place where they could deposit their money. Many people wanted the national bank and many didn't. Thomas Jefferson thought that it was not a part of the delegated powers, but Hamilton knew that it could stabilize and improve our nation's credit. It would improve the financial system of the United States government under the new Constitution. All of the Anti-Federalists stood by Jefferson, and all the Federalists stood by Alexander and his claims. Hamilton's work paid off, and the bank bill was made. The bill is going to pass fairly quickly in the Senate, but it's going to meet resistance in the House of Representatives. Yet, on February 8, 1791, it was passed by 39 to 20, and on September 9, 1791, there was a newspaper published in New York stating, "The bill pending before Congress for establishing a national bank is certainly constitutional." On February 21, 1791, the bank bill was submitted to President George Washington, who's going to decide whether or not to sign this bill to create a national bank. He turns to two candidate members, Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson and Attorney General Edmund Randolph, to offer opinions. And they both say that the bank is unconstitutional. Jefferson made the obvious case that it was not a part of the delegated powers in Article 1, Section 8, and therefore is obviously unconstitutional. Hamilton then says in Article 1, Section 8, it allows the Congress to make mandatory laws, and so the national bank must be made. So George Washington says that at the end of the Constitution is something known as the Sweeping Clause, which proves that the first national bank is necessary for the United States of America. All of Hamilton's work paid off because the first national bank opened in Philadelphia on December 12, 1791. Today, the National Bank has made an impact by allowing the government to make money off loans and taxes. It also secures the government's funds, allows the government to make crucial deposits, and pays the government's bills. The Federal Reserve even says that the primary purpose is to auction treasury bonds and provide cash deposits and lending services. So finally, with everything going on in Hamilton's home life, he never stopped caring about our nation's government. The First National Bank has made our country's financial system stronger than ever, and none of that would be possible without Alexander Hamilton. The bank eventually came to an end in 1811, as it served the United States for a term of 20 years. The bank ended because its charter expired, and Alexander Hamilton had died, so there was no one fighting to bring the bank back. Then the Second National Bank was built, but was also shut down because President Andrew Jackson removed all federal funds from the National Bank after his re-election in 1832. After that, it ceased operations as a national institution after its charter expired in 1836. The bank may have been shut down, but its story still lives on, as it inspires children today to do what they think is just, and to work hard for what they believe in, just as Alexander Hamilton did.